Welcome, everyone, back to another BOLDcast One Piece podcast discussion. I'm Carson.
I'm Lindsay.
And today we're discussing the Fishman Island saga arc thing. Return to Sabaody to the end of Fishman Island and post-Fishman Island. Mm-hmm. It's just going to be a short and sweet one, hopefully. And we didn't have time to set up the whole setup this time. So we're just using the setup that we're kind of using for other shows on the main channel right now. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so here we are.
Mm-hmm. We're here.
You're
also here.
And you're also here.
And you are ready to hear us respond to the questions that were asked by by people on our Patreon.
Indeed.
And the first one that we're going to start out with is from Ramun Ia, and they asked thoughts on Caribou and the fake Strawhats. I feel like this is a good one to start it off because that was also how the arc kind of got started off. Mm-hmm. And I feel like it's funny because it's like, obviously I hate them all and they all suck, but like the way that it was able to start off the arc was something that was just so ridiculous, of these like buffoons playing like, you know, like a Walmart Temu like straw hats, and then everyone was like believing it.
Yeah.
It was just so good. And then when Chopper was believing it, was so sad.
It's so funny, and it's a good way to kind of get into the, like, you know, show how far we've come, like, as, like, so much of this part of the story.
And also showing their reputation.
Yeah,
that,
that's
like,
what I mean.
The fact that people are impersonating them, the fact that people are scared of them and believing and, like, trying to get on their crew. Like, there was, like, an open call for crew members and stuff, you know? And then it was so satisfying just to watch them all get destroyed. Mm-hmm. So I really liked it. I feel like it was a fun and interesting way to, like, get back with the crew and get back with everyone and start off the, like, post-time skip. Because it's like, if you know, I feel like it's a funny idea to have, like, impersonators. And I think that there's no better time. Like, you couldn't really do it at any other point without it maybe coming across as, like, kind of irrelevant to whatever was going on, but it was so good.
The only I mean, it kind of happened with Duval beforehand, but it was kind of the opposite because he didn't want to be Sanji.
Oh yeah.
He just looked like him. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so it kind of had it similar before, but yeah, it's just kind of showing the fruits of the labor, you know, like we're all famous pirates now, and you know, there's some evidence of that first thing.
And then it also created some really good moments for Sentomaru, and to be like, he immediately knew that was not them, and was immediately just like, because it's like other people, and not just because he had seen them before, but just because he knew that they weren't good enough, just like by their vibe alone. And it was, I feel like that whole the whole like intro, and then like Luffy with the fake mustache and everything was just like, it was, especially the more I think about it, the more I like it, and the more I feel like it was just so nice to start off the whole thing.
I liked it. I liked it. It was funny. It dragged a little bit, but like, you know, not too bad. And what I was gonna say is it was so good for like the whole start of Return to Sabaody to be like about people not realizing that they were fake, but then, like, we watched it kind of like out of order, but with fan letter, the way the girl was just like, that's obviously not them, like, like it just added so much funny, like, it's just another element of humor to that part of the story. So good.
Really, I like it. I appreciate it. I think it was funny, and also just really shows how far they come in a fun way. And it's cool because we'd already been to Sabaody, so it wasn't like going there and like encountering the pacifistas was anything new or unexpected. The new and unexpected was all of the fake Straw Hats. And then obviously Caribou just like sucked from the beginning and was terrible the entire time, but at least it wasn't like trying to make him that good. And I also just love how, like, after he had kind of like served his purpose, he just got like one punched into oblivion. Yeah. But then he was like kind of like sneaking around at the end and like overhearing stuff and Shirahoshi, the weapon and this and that. So, but like I liked the way that he was handled, and I loved how within the arc he went from being like one of the creepiest guys that we had seen to like he's basically irrelevant.
Pathetic.
Just
Completely
get him
pathetic.
out of here, you know.
Like, so pathetic, yeah, you don't even want to see him. He's so pathetic.
Exactly.
And annoying.
And not so pathetic. And what's interesting is, like, you know, there's Vanderdecken, who from the first instant that you see him, you hate him and you don't want to see him and you wish that he wasn't there in every possible way.
Yeah.
Caribou was, like, kind of like that a little bit, but more just because he was, like, so horrific that you're like, oh my god, like, get this guy away from me. Mm-hmm. Not like he's not good. Like, his design and his power and, like, everything about him was, like, well, it was so well done that I didn't want him around.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it's kind of a different thing than, like, someone like Vanderdecken who you don't want around. Just because he sucks.
Yeah.
And he's lame.
Yeah. Pretty much.
Mm-hmm. Ty asked, Oda has been teasing Fishman Island for a while now. Did the location live up to your expectations? And what do you expect of future locations? I feel like the location, like, in a lot of ways lived up to my expectations. I feel like, especially like, not just visually, but, like, just, I feel like he kind of tried something new a little bit with the plot here, and also because it was built off of, you know, all the stuff that happened in Arlong Park and all of Nami's backstory and how that was able to, like, build up since we met Hachi, and that wound was kind of reopened, and then ever since then it's been escalated, and then we finally get here. I feel like I got kind of what I was promised. Yeah. With what was shown to me from leading up to Fishman Island.
I think so too.
You know?
I think so too. Mm-hmm. I agree. The only thing that I would say is that it felt like the situation of that I would have liked there to be more interaction with the Strawhats in the water, because I think that was built up a lot more, but then we mostly, other than a few circumstances, were in, like, gigantic bubbles. And there were a few times earlier, especially earlier on in the arc, where being in the water was, like, a significant threat. And then obviously at the end with Fukaboshi, where Luffy was, like, in the bubble and, like, it was an element to the arc. But like, I can't help but wonder, I guess, if it was a choice of necessity to have, like, the elements of the bubbles the way that they were. Obviously it was set up, like, with, you know, Sabaodi's right there. The tree, we know that the trunks of the trees went all the way down. So elements of there being, like, air bubbles and air pockets and things like that, that was properly established, and, you know, that was expected. And even going down, learning about, don't poke too many holes at once, or, like, one large slash is you can pop the bubbles. Like, that was set up, I think, so that, you know, Luffy can't do Gumma Gumma no Gatling, obviously, because that's, like, his main move. So then that, like, changes the way that Luffy has to interact in this arc, where everybody's, and this is kind of it goes into the power scaling. It's like, I think the bubbles initially were kind of more of a nerfing thing, to be like, to interact with this new place in a new way, but also to help nerf the Straw Hats because they were so
they just went on, like, crazy time skip that
and
they got
then
so
eventually
powerful.
we would get into, like, a big bubble fight where, like, they were on land, you know, and that kind of held true, like, if you think about with Zoro versus Hordy earlier on in the arc. But, like, I feel like some of the aura of it being a fishman and a mermaid kingdom is lost, or at least compromised, perhaps, and you guys could tell me if you agree, with the people who are, like, mermaid, like the princes, for example, floating around on bubbles instead of being sort of owning their natural habitat. Like, and, you know, they're amphibious, so they breathe air and water, and it is kind of more convenient to be in air if you're, like, trying to have pirates come, or, like, you know, have trade be there. So it's not like it doesn't make sense. Like, there's obviously a lot of reasons why they're all in a bubble and why the island is in a bubble. I'm sure there's a lot more lore reasons connected to that, like with the Noah and stuff like that, and all the stuff we were kind of learning about Joy Boy. But my point is, like, I feel like aesthetically, in terms of the vibes, like the whole, like, coral, the sea forest, you know, pretty much everything about it was, like, it was very beautiful and it was incredible, and I felt like there was a good culture there when we went there. But I do feel like something is lost I don't know if you would say it's going back on like or not committing to them being in water. I don't know if I would put it that strongly exactly, but that's kind of what it is. It's like and that's not even mentioning like the anime sort of like in I remember one scene where in the Otogime flashback, she's like running towards people in a crowd and you can hear footsteps, and I think that they just didn't pay attention to that. Like that's an anime thing. But I think that like, and
also, I mean, maybe she like split her legs into human legs.
Maybe that's possible. I didn't know if she was that old.
Although it didn't really seem like many people. Well, I guess we wouldn't.
That was not focused on, and I could, there was no reason to focus on that, so I don't think that that's like Oda forgetting that detail or, But I think more just Occam's razor is probably that the animators or whoever was in charge of the sound design just didn't. But maybe I'm wrong. But anyway, that's like an extra thing. But I don't know if you guys felt the same way when you were watching, because like I think that the whole idea of the bubbles, like again, to summarize, like it's not like that wasn't established with Sabaudi and things like that. Like the whole concept of bubbles and everything, and there's lore reasons and there's pragmatic reasons for the world to exist that way. But something about this Fishman place, most of the people, especially the prestigious people, the top of the top, the most proud fishmen and mermaid or merfolk people, living in a dryland place only to have a bubble around their waist so that they could basically end up moving or be drawn by Oda moving the same way as if they were in water. There basically being no real difference most of the time between them being on land or in the air or in the water. I feel like there's something lost in terms of the aura of just the mobility and being in the world in that way. But as far as, if you care about that kind of thing, I care about that kind of thing, but, it's not like it ruined the arc, but it did kind of feel like where we go all the way down here and, there's this bubble. It's like this oasis, almost like in the middle of a desert. It's like we're deep under the ocean and there's this air bubble. Oh, that's kind of interesting. And they, the merfolk end up basically, it's interchangeable for them.
Yeah.
And I feel like something maybe is lost there, or there's at least like a choice being made there. And I think it's obviously so that we can interact with that as people who are both devil fruit users and just who can't breathe water. I don't know if you guys feel the same way. Let me know how you feel about that. But that was like the only thing that I felt was like questionable about the setting of Fishman Island. Everything else, yeah. Because like I said at the start of the arc, it did feel like it was... it had enough time in the oven before we got it. You know what I mean? Like we got all of Marine. We were introduced to it, and then we got all of Marineford and that whole shit before we actually saw it. And I think that time maybe added to what Oda wanted to, what Oda ended up doing with it. I think it felt a lot more fleshed out than it would have if we went straight from Sabaudi the first time to Fishman Island.
Yeah,
I think a lot more time and like reflection maybe went into building up the location and making it feel more complete, because it felt very complete.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and I think like like you said, there is something cool. I think that also we didn't get to explore the island to its fullest potential, because I remember, I think in a Patreon comment, some people said that it's like very vertical.
Yeah.
But we didn't spend a lot of time, like, in the undersea apartments where Kami lives, was like, there's like the surface level, and then there's like super far down and a bunch of stuff down there, but we didn't really go down there because we didn't really have a reason to go down there. So I think like a little bit of it is that. And then, yeah, also because they would have to have an area in order for it to be a place that pirates were going to be, visiting and like doing business. Yeah. Kind of. So... yeah, I think either way, I still think it was cool. I think that it captured a lot of like classic visuals being in the air, like the mermaids like lounging up on the rocks out of the water when Sanji sees them. I feel like overall it was really cool, and just the striking visual of the bubble when you first see it is surprising, and like that that in itself. It's just cool, and also shows that there's like the with the Fishman district being like very outside, like they're literally living in a bubble, and then all the stuff is like festering over in like the depths underneath them. I feel like also kind of adds to it. Abraham Lever asked, did you guys like Hordy Jones as the main villain of the arc? Or do you wish they would have brought back Arlong to be the villain again?
Yeah, we talked about that in the... And after watching it, I'm a little bit more torn than I was like when we talked about that.
Yeah,
but
when we first brought it up.
I do think there's a version with tweaked events and reasoning for Hordy as a character that it could have still been Arlong and it could have worked. I still think there's a version of it with a few tweaked things that could have worked better than Hordy. But having seen the whole picture... I think that I'm less wanting for that, I guess, than I was when we first brought that up. Seeing seeing the whole, seeing everything, seeing the end and seeing Hordy's end. I think that I'd rather see Hordy in the place where he is right now than Arlong. I feel like seeing Arlong would be a bit tragic, or not even just tragic. It would feel a bit too wasteful of his character if he was brought back. With a little bit more insanity, because that was the thing. It's I think that because what is Hordy? Okay, actually, why Hordy? The question is why Hordy and not Arlong? Baseline. The idea of it, what would separate them is that Arlong had a line that he wouldn't cross, and Hordy is crossing that line. Yeah, and Hordy represents kind of the next generation after Arlong going down the wrong road. So, obviously Arlong can't represent the next generation in the same way, but I think a version of and he's the buck has been passed to him and it's festered even more and he's just a symbol of hatred. I still think there's a version, especially with Jinbei and Arlong being rival brothers. Yeah. Jinbei coming back to Fishman Island and Arlong previously having, got defeated. All of his dreams are ruined. He goes back to Fishman Island a little bit more broken, more cynical, festering. He goes back to his old stomping grounds in a similar way that Fisher Tiger did, in a similar way that Jinbei ended up doing later after the arc, or around the time of the arc. If you think about Arlong coming back, defeated, pathetic to his old stomping grounds, but not as a way of sort of trying to help the people or in his own way trying to help the people, but he comes back dejected, pathetic, but still having the reverence as an older brother figure of the people in the Fishman district. He grows his power slowly, and he had deep ties already, so you know about the Tamate box. Obviously, if Hordy knew about it, then he would know about it. And I guess the point of it being Arlong would be, it's twofold. It's to show, it would be to show stakes and a comeuppance from defeating Arlong at the start of the story. He just show some continuity. It would be the benefit of it being Arlong. If he got brought back, I feel like a lot of people would think that it's cheap to bring back Arlong. That was a couple of the comments that we got when we brought that up. But I think it's not cheap. I wouldn't see it as cheap. I would see it as a good reframing device, similar to how we got Smoker back for at G5 to we got him at Logtown and then we got him at G5, and it's serving the exact same purpose. And I think that Arlong could serve a similar purpose overall narratively, because we know how powerful he was at the start of the series. So much has happened since then, and so much has happened since the time skip. Yeah. But with the drugs and with how much his hate has festered and his morale and how his heart has hardened, if in this interpretation, in this version where it's Arlong and not Hordy, I think that it could still make sense for his character. I think that him being defeated, him being dejected, and especially after seeing the flashback with how close he and Jinbei were, it would make sense why it makes sense either way, but it would make sense why Jinbei would say, don't fight Arlong, because he let Arlong go in the flashback. Yeah. And then turns out he didn't just go off and destroy Nami's home. He let Arlong go. He went and destroyed Nami's home, and then he came back and he destroyed this. He's trying to destroy this place, and that would be on Jinbei as well. So he would have the conflict come back to haunt him in this moment where he's like, I let Arlong go, and now Fishman Island's going to be destroyed. The Noah's falling down. Also,
It would make sense with Hachi.
With Hachi, yes, yeah. Exactly. So Hachi goes back, and Hachi is like, you know, he's kind of like, especially if you look at the flashback when they're kids, when Hordy's whole thing is getting explained, it feels like Hachi is one of Hordy's group, but he was one of Arlong's group. So they're kind of, and I don't know how much is filler. I don't know how much of that part is filler, but like, at least from the anime watcher, it's like Hachi's with Sharley and Hordy and all them, and he's like, oh, I met blah, 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 or I met Rayleigh, this and that. And he's like young, but then he's with Arlong and he's older. I pictured him as a part of like Jinbei and Arlong's age group, rather than like, in between Hordy and like more Sharley's age.
Although I think that it would make a lot of sense.
I have more to say on this. Sorry. So my point in bringing that scene up is, if you think about when Hachi went and tried to reason with Hordy, if Hachi went, like Hachi and Arlong get separated when Arlong Park gets blown up. Arlong goes back and he's dejected and he's fucked up and he feels terrible and then he festers. Hachi goes off and tries to live a better life. He's hanging out with Kami, etc. Then he comes back and sees, Arlong, and now Arlong's like addicted to drugs and he's like abusing kind of his reputation with the younger fishmen. And he's like, and then Hachi is like this person from who was like one of Arlong's closer confidants, who like was there when Jinbei kicked his ass and was there for Arlong Park and was in the trenches with him, even though Hachi was a much softer heart. If you think about Hachi going to reason with Hordy, there's less like history that is important, like that we've seen, that we have context for as an audience, when he goes back and then gets destroyed by Vanderdecken or whatever. If he goes to try and reason with Arlong and says, we've already done so much, like, I know we got defeated, I know that you're hurt, but like, you don't need to do this. I know more than anyone. I can talk to you. All these other kids and all these other fishmen, all these other weirdos that you've collected, all these other junkies, they're not going to tell you because they don't know you like I do. I know you. I'm Hachi. You shouldn't do this. And I think it would carry a lot more weight from Hachi to Arlong than Hachi to Hordy. And it would be a lot more devastating when Hachi almost dies. And if it was Arlong who almost kills him instead of like Vanderdecken or Hordy or whatever. So that scene, I feel, it feels like the kind of scene that if Oda, like, this is total, like, this is my, random feelings and interpretation. It feels like the kind of scene that was meant to have a lot of weight, but is lacking kind of something. And maybe there's a version of that where he was thinking, if it was, you see what I'm saying? Like, there's a lot in it that is more than just, I guess the point is, there's a lot in it that is more than just, I like Arlong, Arlong's cool, Arlong's established, we know him already, so it would just be easy. Like, because I don't think that, after seeing it, I still think there's, again, with some minor changes, there is a version of the story where Arlong takes Hordy's place, and I think the emotional stakes are just so much higher, especially if you take out the part where Hordy at the end is just like old and dying. Maybe a version of Arlong is like that, where he's just like rotting in a cell, and then way later down the line, he has some kind of redemption where like Jinbei brings him back or something like that, or something like that. But he has this, that would close the loop really nicely, and it would also, I just thought of this, the link between where Nami is like, oh, me and you, Shirahoshi, we're kind of the same. It's like Arlong destroyed Nami's home. Arlong's trying to destroy, in this version, Arlong's now trying to destroy Fishman Island. That kind of conversation already makes sense. It already, like, it's not like it doesn't work now. But I think that there's so much more added weight to bringing back Arlong. That's not just a fan servicey thing. It's not just a lazy thing. It brings the sort of hostile brothers, the like Cain and Abel-esque relationship between Jinbei and Arlong. If Arlong takes Hordy's place, and it's more tragic and it's more pathetic. Yeah. Because Hordy, although he was supposed to be scary and menacing, he was, but he wasn't that scary and menacing because he wasn't actually that strong. Because he was just hopped up on all these drugs. I think that it would be such a good way to ring in this new part of the story if we have like Luffy versus Arlong part 2. And he even did the shark thing. I thought for a minute that they were going, when he did that, I was like, I had a flash of a moment where I'm just like, is it actually Arlong and he's wearing a disguise or something? Like, or it has some kind of drug magic that like redid his face or some shit. I still, but all that being said, I still think there's a better version of Fishman Island, even better than it already was, which was already a really good arc. Even better than it already was, if Hordy was switched with Arlong. But after seeing the whole picture, I feel a lot more happy with what we actually have. And I don't feel like it needs to be Arlong. I'll say that, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
I think that Arlong, like, yeah, I agree, but I think that the difference, and I think that the reason why, in the end, I still do prefer Hordy is because I think, because Arlong has that line that he won't cross, and because it was so established as part of his character, especially in these flashbacks, that's like, that is his line, then I think that in order to make him cross that line, the moral of the story would have to take a shift from with Hordy, where it's like, be careful what you say to the children, they're the next generation, and you don't want to put hate in their hearts about things that they don't even know and haven't even experienced. I think that it would have to shift a little bit to be about the corruption of the drugs and have that take more of a focus of like, Arlong is shitty and he fucking was terrible and he like did so many bad things to humans, but he had his line that he wouldn't cross and he wouldn't harm other fishmen. He gets into drugs as like his kind of last attempt of like, okay guys, you know, we got defeated, we're not strong enough, you know what, I heard of this drug that is, I heard of this magical power, if we open this box then we can get power. And maybe that's what we have to do after we got defeated. He like gets up his crew, he heads back, and then he gets the box, and then he takes the drugs, and then that would be what would corrupt him, because I think that his character is strong enough that I don't see him getting, and I think that's why a lot of people agree that like they don't see him sort of naturally descending into like the mindless rage-filled monster that is Hordy, you know?
Yeah, so, I agree with that. I agree that like he does have that line, but like that's what a dynamic character does, is that like we see him when he was a kid, he was or like a teenager, he had a lot stronger convictions, and then those were challenged when he was with Fisher Tiger, and there was that girl Koala.
Yeah.
Things were challenged. And then Fisher Tiger dies and he goes on a fucking rampage and then goes off on his own. And then we go to where we first meet him, where he literally shoots a mother in the face in front of her daughters.
Yeah.
Like, you know, that's a step down the road if you look at it through a chronological lens. Obviously, before it was just because he most likely because he was just supposed to be a big villain guy. But we already saw a change and a development in his morals. And I think that you're right, more focus on the drug would kind of split the difference at the very end there. But I could see his hatred for humans going further after losing to the Strawhats and losing the one place that he had built himself. And then going back and getting the drugs. I do think that like, now that you mention it, the drugs coming from the Tamate box, or the power of it coming from there, is interesting. I wonder if there's more lore implications like that will come up later, like, you know, with all this stuff with Joy Boy or whatever the hell's going on with that. Maybe this like power was from back then or something, or it's just because if it's just related to the Shinto or the Japanese mythology, I don't even know the story exactly. Anyway, then, you know, whatever. But what I was saying was I think that it would have played in a lot better with that interpretation if the drug came from outside, from like from somebody, because then it would mirror the real life civil rights movement like so much of the arc does. And I think that's maybe what Oda was trying to get at, but then kind of simplified it maybe at the end, maybe, because that's what happened in the United States is if Fishmen are like an analog for black people in the civil rights movement and stuff like that, like this Malcolm X type stuff. You know, that happened. The CIA, or at least I don't know if it's theorized or if it actually is confirmed. I'm pretty sure it's like mostly confirmed that the CIA or the FBI flooded like black neighborhoods with crack, and that's why like there's such a strong association with impoverished African American communities and use of crack cocaine is because it was designed to get them addicted to like keep them down because it was because of a lot of more economic reasons, I think, with like foreign acquisition of crack cocaine and stuff like that is where the conspiracy theory kind of goes. But anyway, I think it's like it's pretty well documented. So I think that Oda probably was working that into the story, and the drugs were supposed to be. But the fact that they just got it from the Tamate box, I think, kind of like flattens that out a little bit. But as an element of making this whole Arlong interpretation of the arc kind of work, I think that would play into it a lot.
Yeah.
Because we've already seen him change over the course of the flashback to where we knew him before. And then knowing this link between the civil rights movement, black people, etc., and the Fishman experience, I think that isn't an accident. And I think that maybe that could have played into it a lot more in like in another world, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think also like with the drug angle for like if it was Arlong, I think that they would have to play more into that and make that, because we joked the whole time like, oh, Hordy's like he's just like going crazy, he's having all these drugs, but like the drugs didn't necessarily like change his ideology or anything like that. They just sent him on a more extreme of like what he was already on, whereas I think with Arlong it would have had to like be actually like rotting his brain to the point, because that's the other thing with Arlong, and the difference between Hordy is Hordy didn't care about the people around him. Even before, he didn't care about anything, and he was fine to kill everyone for no reason. But we know that Arlong was deeply sensitive and cared about the people around him, and cried when Fisher Tiger died, and did all of the things that he did because he cared so much. Not that it was right, but yeah, it would have a different moral, and I think that all of Otahime, all of Fisher Tiger, all of their backstories, everything was about the next generation, and like you, as a person who has experienced things, have a role to play in how you relay those experiences in your life to the people who haven't experienced anything yet, because they're like it's like children are a blank slate, and you like choose what to tell them, and that will shape their perspective forever. So I think it being Hordy works because I think that was the message that Oda was most strongly trying to send, and maybe previously I feel like a lot of the other like previous arcs have not had as strong of an idea and of a message and of something that like is kind of unrelated to One Piece in general, that is just like a general like a lesson that he is trying to impart on the audience. So I feel like maybe if he had gotten to Fishman Island earlier and he like wasn't thinking about it in this way, then maybe it would have been Arlong, and maybe it would have been what we just talked about. But I think that the choice to go with Hordy was intentional and was the best choice for the very specific message that he was trying to send, and the story that he was trying to tell within Fishman Island as an arc.
I think that the message, I think the strong messaging and the strong theming is like it's getting stronger with each arc, and I think that it was strongest here, and I think that that's what makes the arc so good and so like feel a lot more deep than like many other arcs for sure, because it really is like kind of it's a very serious topic, and but I still think that you could have that and it be Arlong and it still be a descent, and then Arlong in that case would be it would serve the same purpose. It's just that Arlong would have changed, and that the tragedy would be that he let go of all of his compassion and just became he went from somebody who cried at Fisher Tiger's death, at somebody who was trying to be revolutionary, trying to unite people. At the tragedy of that, he became hardened and then became that monster that the Hordy was in the end. Like if you put Arlong in that place, I think the moral is still there, whether it's Arlong or Hordy. I just think that I just can't help but wonder if it would be, I think it might be better, but I don't fault Oda for my like fan fiction is what I'm saying. Like I have my own idea, and I think it could have been better, but that doesn't mean that it's bad, or it doesn't mean that like he did it bad.
And that doesn't mean that it would have been better for what Oda was trying to do with this story.
And I do think that I do like the way that Hordy actually ended up being. You know, like rather than being, because this is a good way to like put it, is like if Arlong was in Hordy's shoes and there was this tragic like this like turn from grace, or this like what you could have been a hero but instead you turned out to be just a complete monster and like a shadow of your former self. You could have carried on Fisher Tiger's legacy, you could have helped people, instead you're destroying your home because out of just pure hatred, look what you've become type thing. That would have been so corny if it was Hordy doing that, who like say Hordy was a good soldier and he was a good fishman guy, and then he turned into an asshole over time. That would be so lame. So I like that's what I'm saying is it's like I would hate it if what I'm describing for Arlong's version of this happened to Hordy. I really like that it's not that, and instead he is this like almost primordial ball of hatred that is just like almost like AI, like a sentient AI, just kind of like a coagulation of the hatred that is just in the air in this place. And he is like born to be wild type thing, like literally, like I like that so much more because he literally becomes not some tragic fallen from grace, could have been a hero, anti-hero type guy. He becomes a monster that is born of the hatred of this system. Like that's way cooler than that. But if it works both ways too, because if you were thinking about Arlong in that situation, he was it would override all the shit that was done for his character. And what I was
also thinking about with
I like what it was.
Yeah. What I was also thinking about, if it was Arlong, then I think it also wouldn't have worked nearly as well for even the sole reason of Hordy being the one to kill Queen Otohime. That was a number of years ago, that it wouldn't have made sense for Arlong to do that, because like that was at like around that, because the whole thing was like Otohime and Fisher Tiger.
That was one of the changes that I would say would like say it was assassin since by the Celestial Dragon, or maybe Deccan's still in this version of the story, and Deccan did it on maybe I don't know about Arlong's orders, or it was an accident, or something else.
Or maybe in that version that would be a change. No, I guess.
Yeah, or that would be a change that I would make in this version of it, is that Arlong wouldn't do that, or he would arrive after that. But then that's a hole in my thing, is that it wouldn't be. Hordy is directly tied to those events, and that's part of what makes him a menace. That's part of like his evil plotting. So it would dampen this like hypothetical that I'm kind of going into. But I think there's still a lot of positives to it. Maybe I should write a fanfic.
I bet there are so many fan fictions of exactly this with.
I don't know if I could write a One Piece fanfic effectively. Like I think I could write fanfics better of series that like I enjoy better than, at least part of them better than that. But I don't think I could capture
the
One
vibe.
Piece. Yeah, I think it's a difficult thing to capture, especially if you're not like drawing it. It's very difficult. I don't know if I could capture. I don't think I could come up with a genius that is the Iron Pirate, or Sanji needing a blood transfusion for his nosebleed, for example.
No, actually, that sounds like fan fiction.
That does sound like fan fiction.
That literally sounds like fan fiction. Just as we're talking about all this, I'm gonna tack on this question really quickly before we move on to some of the other stuff. Damidor asked, after hearing about all the pacing problems prior to starting, how do you feel about this arc as a whole? And when are you thinking of watching the remaster, in brackets, if you are?
We are thinking about watching the remaster. I really want to. Looking back, I kind of wish we did, but I forget there was one, it was like it was the Sea Kings showing up and talking scene or something. That was cut out This seems like an insane thing to cut out. I don't know how much of it was, or if all of it was, or what. But
feel
somebody
like
said,
that.
we got to that, and then people were finally like, this is why we said not to watch the remaster. So I don't know what, or how much, or how little, or all of it, or none of it, or whether they're just fucking wrong. I don't know. But glad we didn't for that reason, because that was insane. But also, I do want to watch the remaster. What do you think about the pacing?
I think the pacing was not bad. I think that anyone, like, I don't think that it was any better or any worse than like 99% of the rest of the show
compared to Thriller Bark and Skypiea.
And I think that this, like, the writing and like the quality of the story was incredibly superior. So I didn't mind a slight slow pacing because it didn't feel like I mean, like, some of the fight stuff was a little bit drawn out, but honestly, I felt like a lot of just, like, the, like, moments within the story were a little bit dragged out, which I kind of would prefer to, like, a never-ending fight of, like, nothing, like, you know, like, you know, we don't want the ball ordeal again, you know, but I didn't find it too bad, and I kind of just liked the vibe of it, so I was all right to just chill out. It didn't bother me, like, pretty much at all. Sometimes it was funny when there was, like, 30 solid seconds of, like, 50 different people reacting to one thing.
There were times where it was noticeably bad, and perhaps worse than other times. And I know that a lot of people, like, this isn't a new thing. This is an ongoing discussion that people have had for, like, 10 years or more. Like, the pacing was not the best. But, you know, the same could be said for, like, every One Piece arc. I will never forget in Skypiea when it was, I think, was it Sanji, Usopp, it was Sanji, Usopp, and Luffy on the boat, on the river, on their way to the ball ordeal, and the episode that was reusing the same, like, 2 or 3 backgrounds of them sailing down and just, like, joking around and hitting each other, and, like, the voice actors, like, going off on a script. And it was, like, 5 straight minutes or something of just that. That's one example. The whole ball ordeal in general. And that's just one example. There's plenty of other ones, and even in very beloved arcs, that Marineford had those moments. You know, but obviously, and people have discussed this in their versions of this discussion that's been happening for the last 10 years, is that the reason why it probably feels so bad is because Marineford just happened. And what I was also going to say, that, like, people know that we're not looking at the chapter breakdowns per episode. Like, that's a big thing that a lot of people judge it on. And if you look at it, zoom out, how many chapters per episode, it can feel better or worse or whatever. After just watching and not paying attention to that, was it on the lower end of the spectrum of, you know, quality pacing One Piece arcs? Yes. It was not the best paced. It was probably one of the worst paced arcs. But, like, it's still within the gradient of a One Piece arc as far as pacing and like, inter-episode filler.
And like I said, what Oda was actually accomplishing with this, with the story here and with the messaging and with the themes was, you know, it was so much more enjoyable. And like I said, it didn't feel like we were just, you know, spending a million years on something that was, like, not really contributing to the overall vibe or the overall messaging. You know, it felt like stuff was dragged out, but it honestly, it also felt like very dragged out. Like, the whole thing was, like, kind of evenly dragged out, which I think, you know, I don't know. I think a lot of it is just trying to compare stuff, or, like, you know, how within your mind you watch something and you forget that, you know, there was, like, 50 episodes of, like, Kuro, like, whipping around and, like, killing his own guys.
Yeah.
Like, as they're, like, all just, like, running up a hill for, like, it felt like forever. You know, like, it didn't bother me, and overall I enjoyed it, and I yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that, like, yeah, was it bad? I mean, like, yes, but, like, so is not most of One Piece. Like, the pacing.
One Piece sucks. You heard it here, guys.
Was the pacing bad? Yes, but it wasn't so outside of what One Piece normally does to where it was, like, undoable. Like, there's plenty of times where it's been that bad. It's just maybe been shorter, like one episode. Instead, it was maybe 2 episodes at a time or 3 episodes at a time here.
There's also a lot of banger episodes.
Yeah, and I still feel bad that we missed whatever 557 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
That was a big no.
But like, you know, I don't know. I think it was all right. I think it was good. I think
like where I'm at is with the pacing is like, if it gets a lot worse,
if it gets to the point that I can't still enjoy the story, then like, but that hasn't it's not even close.
No,
to that
and also maybe it's helped how we've watched it. We watched this arc mostly like 1 episode a day, and we just kept it to that. Sometimes 2, but like for most of the arc, it was like we were busy or doing other stuff.
We're also just trying to be consistent with it, you know.
Yeah, we really tried to be consistent. So we just would like go through our day and then, you know, watch other stuff for the main channel or just live our life. And then at the end, rather than like, okay, we need to watch, like we need to binge, you know, let's set aside time. We're going to do a One Piece binge, get like 5 episodes and then feel like we just got through a slog. Instead, we were like, let's just check in with One Piece. 15
every
minutes.
Day.
You know, because it's 15, 16 minutes with the recap and with the OP and all that shit. 15, 16 minutes once a day, talk about it for 10 minutes, boom. And then and it felt really relaxing most of the time and chill to watch. So I imagine if you were, I think a lot of the conversation comes from people who either watched it when it was coming out and were watching it week to week, which I cannot imagine if getting through this with week to week, because that would be insane.
Yeah.
Or people today even who binge it, have to binge through all those episodes that are kind of shit, because there were episodes that, like, I guess here's the difference is that there's a lot of episodes in the past that like were slow, but like I don't remember many times where in the discussion I started it off with, well, that was kind of an L episode, I'm not gonna lie, that episode kind of fucking sucked. But I felt comfortable doing that in like a couple, like maybe 2 or 3 times, it feels like, in this arc. So like, yeah, it was worse, but it wasn't, again, it's still a One Piece arc. It's not so much worse than, you know, what I would come to expect from a One Piece arc as far as pacing. So
we just got really lucky with like good pacing for the last, especially even with Return to Sabaody, like the pacing for that was really, really good. So
mostly, yeah.
So, you know, I don't know. Yeah. Overall, was not an issue. Would still like to check out
I want to see the remaster.
The remaster at some point. I just kind of want to see what they did. Honestly, I'm still glad that we watched the original first. I feel like it was worthwhile even just to like see what the complaints were about.
Yeah.
You know? Like, and to just be able to give a full review of like, you know, what everyone kind of expects.
Yeah. Same.
Ransom asked, what are your final thoughts about Madame Sharley's vision? Do you think she was simply wrong for once, or will it come true somehow in the future?
See, here's the thing, is it could go either way. And I think Oda did it on purpose, is where she can just be wrong if he doesn't want to come back to it. I hope that she's not wrong, because it would be really annoying if you set up a perfect psychic who has never been wrong, and you set, like, the reason you do that is because what she's saying is true, and then you're setting expectations and you're getting everyone hyped up. That's the point. If she's just randomly wrong because you didn't want to follow through, that's annoying, and I don't think that he'll do that.
Especially because he brought it up again at the end. I think
also with a little like woo.
Yeah. So that's what makes me think like that she's not wrong and something will happen. I still think it'll be something along the lines of like, I don't think Luffy's going to just come here and be like, okay, I'm going to kill everyone in Fishman Island for no reason, just because I'm evil.
What
now.
I hope is that it's not like what I think would be cool is if, I mean, I don't think they'll do this because it would feel like, I don't know, it's a little extreme. Maybe you will. Maybe I'm just completely, but if Big Mom just bombs the fucking island and destroys it and like many people die, like that while they're not there, they're like off in the New World or on their way to whatever is Whole Cake Island, and they just get absolutely devastated, and it was because Luffy was it's not because Luffy, you know, lost against Hordy in this big Civil War battle and like, oh, it's or like he had to destroy to like save everyone or type thing. It's a way smaller thing. It's a phone call and he just doomed them all, or like, you know, like, but what I hope is that they're not like, oh, Luffy destroyed us because he made housing prices go up by 20%
Yeah,
because he
could also
fucked
be
us up.
if Luffy's supposed
He destroyed our economy. Oh no.
It could, even if it's not this soon with Big Mom, it could be it could be if he defeats her and becomes the protector of Fishman Island. If he's not there to protect them, then technically it is his fault. Like, if someone destroys them. He could also, later on, maybe he's listening to the Poneglyph audiobook and it's like, actually, you need to destroy the Fishman Island. And he's like, all right. But everyone gets evacuated first, so no one's actually, like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like there's a lot of ways it can go.
What I pray is that it's true and it's sad. Like, because I feel like we're going to be on, maybe we won't. This is a prediction. I feel like we're going to be on a bit of a win streak to make up for the L's that he was taking, although maybe at this point it's a habit of Oda and we just keep on taking L's in the big picture. But I think it would be a big, like, step. It would be a big, like ego check in the future if we need an ego check for Luffy to take Fishman Island under his wing, them to believe in him, and then for him to fuck it up, and it's a huge problem. Maybe if we're all leading up to, and the end of the series is like a giant war arc, Marineford X2, but it's Luffy leading the charge again, but like Luffy leading the charge as like, the successor to Roger, fucking all this other shit. What was I even saying?
That's...
Oh, and that kicks it off. Like, maybe the world government, like, destroys Fishman Island, his one thing, and that's what gets... That's when Overtaken starts playing, is they bomb Fishman Island, it's like...
Or, here's the other thing, is if it could be maybe even a similar thing to what happened, like, that we thought was going to happen, that Hordy was going to kind of succeed in his takeover, and then Luffy destroying Fishman Island is actually him destroying Hordy's edition of Fishman Island. That's kind of like what we maybe thought was going to happen. Yeah. It could be a similar thing, maybe the Marines, maybe someone else goes and, like, takes over Fishman Island, and the only way to, like, free it is to just destroy the whole thing.
I don't think he would do that.
Yeah.
I don't think he would do that. Unless everyone was safe, maybe he would. But yeah. Something like that. I think it'll come back around. I hope it comes back around in a satisfying way, and I think it will. Because I don't think that Oda would do this. Like, I think it's more likely for Oda to forget than for him to use it poorly. Like, that's, like, I think or not forget, but, like, ditch it. Yeah. Like, say he's just like, oh, man, I'm trying this vintage, nah, fuck it. Whatever. Maybe it'll happen someday after the series or something. I think it's more likely that he'll, like, move on and just not forget about it, but just, like, throw it in a drawer. Or use it to maximum effect, as in big consequences or something. Yeah. Rather than, like I said, oh, he destroyed the housing market of Fishman Island, so we're fucked type thing. Or he destroyed our commerce, or, yeah. Or I mean, maybe that's, I don't know.
I think that Luffy, it'll either come back or it won't. And I agree that it's more likely to get ditched than to be done badly, because I think that, like, if that's one thing that we've noticed about the series is, like, if Oda is not vibing with something that he set up, he will take the full liberty to change it or abandon
it entirely. Yeah,
just do something that he likes better instead, which works out better because no one wants to read something that, like, the author isn't even interested in for themselves.
Next question.
Kaku asked, how do you feel about Aokiji leaving the Marines? I think Carson theorized something similar during the post-Ennie's Lobby discussion for episode 315, if I remember correctly. And you were asking if Aokiji's personality and actions would get him demoted from his position, get him in trouble, or bring conflict into the Marines, or if Oda would brush it off. If you could elaborate on your thoughts now that he left the Marines on his own accord.
So what's the question? Just what do we think about Aokiji leaving? I mean...
Yeah, I guess the thing is, like,
we predicted he would get in trouble, or we're wondering if he would get in trouble, but we found out that, he's admirals just get a lot of leniency. And Sengoku and Garp were very lenient leaders. when they were in charge, but now they're not. And yeah, I don't really know what to think about it beyond just he left, and that's kind of crazy.
I'm kind of interested to see how he's gonna fit in, because we've talked about it a million times, that Marines are basically just pirates, like legal pirates.
Yeah, they're just the biggest pirate gang.
I'm interested to see how Aokiji is going to fit in that. Either maybe he's just retired and he's gonna try and live his life.
They're setting up for him versus Akainu part 2, but Luffy's gonna be there and he's gonna be on our side this time, and there's gonna be a reckoning there. I think that Aokiji is probably just gonna be a pirate, probably a solo pirate. I bet he'll be like a Mihawk type figure, and he'll be biking around, because you remember he was biking around like, you know, on his bike. I think it's gonna be that, honestly. I think that's the simplest thing, but I don't know where it goes from that. I don't know where he'll show up. Probably wherever Akainu is. He'll probably be there in the final fight. That's what I think.
I think, I guess the thing is, like, because the Marines are kind of like pirates, if he's just gonna, like, lean into that, or if he's gonna just try and, like, be his own thing, like, oh, I'm not a pirate, but I'm basically a pirate.
Yeah.
Kind of vibe. Or if he has any, you know, if he actually cares about the Marines, if he has any ambitions to, you know, kind of wait for a good opportunity to, like, strike back into them and, like, you know, kind of set things to right, because obviously we know that him and Akainu are not 100% on the same page all the time.
I mean, they're literally, they don't work together anymore. So.
Yeah. Chris asked, hey, I asked a question on the previous Ennie's Lobby discussion about Sanji and his gag. Back then, it could be more justified than it is currently, but thoughts on Sanji's character and Oda's choices for him. Do you think it will improve or spiral from here on?
Yeah, we were just talking, I don't like Sanji very much anymore. Like, I thought, like, him being a perv was, like, funny and was funny. It was funny and kind of charming, because he was, like, a gentlemanly perv. Like, I think that was the point, is that, like, when he was just, like, fawning after Robin and Nami and, like, constantly trying to, like, serve them food first and, like, slapping people's hands because they were going after their food or drinks or whatever that he made for them. That's cute and funny, but, like, the level we're at now is a bit just, it's too much, and we only lose things with him. I think it's just gonna spiral, because his whole time skip arc had to do with that type of shit and being deprived all of that and dealing with all that stuff that was going on over there. I think it's only going to get worse, and that honestly saddens me, because Sanji was my favorite Straw Hat at the beginning.
Yeah, if you go back into the last podcast, we both had Sanji in our top 5 Straw Hat list. So, or maybe it was even top 3. I can't remember, but it was, I think, like,
your top, maybe. I don't remember.
But it's like Sanji, and that's what was impressive about Sanji as a character, is I do not like, and you're not a big fan of them either, this archetype of a character in any show. And I remember when we watched the live action and we saw Sanji, and, like, obviously the live action is, like,
very toned down.
It's very toned down, but I remember we watched that, and you, I'm pretty sure, immediately were like, you were like, guys, Lindsay's gonna fucking hate this guy in the actual show, and I was really worried, because I was like, I loved him in the live action, he's so good, I'm probably gonna fucking hate him in the anime. But then we watched the anime, and I'm like, I still love him, he's still very endearing and charming and, like, a lovable guy, despite that he is this character archetype. He feels
kind of like a caricature.
Yeah, well, and even through, you know, like, Thriller Bark, it was like, you know, I feel like it was like,
I think the reason why people were pointing out the Thriller Bark thing of him and Absalom about the invisibility fruit, like, the whole gag was that, oh, I wanted that. I think that people go back to that, and I can see now, like, seeing where Sanji is kind of going,
that it's worth
that it might be the, like, people have probably thought about this and been like, that was the beginning of the end. So I think that's why people made a big deal about that. I thought it was just a one-off joke, but no, it's the start, kind of. You could say, I imagine people argue it's the start of a continuum that leads to kind of where we are with him right now. And I liked him as he was, like, way early on a lot more, because I feel like he was a little bit more varied, and I feel like that way about his and Zoro's rivalry a lot more. Like, I just saw the clip. I don't know if we actually saw it, like, or if it was in a filler. But when when Sanji and Zoro are washing dishes, and then Sanji's like washing and Zoro's drying, he's just like, you guys all know what I'm talking about already. He's just like, oh, Zoro, oh yeah, and they like, and then he just keeps saying it, and then he's like, stop telling, like you just annoys him for like. But now every one of their clashes is like, oh, Moss Head, oh fuck it, and it feels like it's lost the variety, and I feel like that's the problem with Sanji. Is we've lost the variety with him, it feels like sometimes. And you could say that about... you could probably say that about Usopp, but I feel like we need another... You could say that about other people. I would say that about Usopp right now, but Usopp was not the focus of this.
You could also say
whereas
that about
Sanji
Chopper.
was the focus of this arc. Like that's the difference, is that Sanji, and to an extent Chopper helping Sanji, they were more focused on this arc. Usopp very much took a back seat. So I hope that we get a little bit more of him going forward. So I won't levy the same criticism against Usopp or really anyone else. But we got a lot of Sanji, and what we got is like it feels like Sanji's kind of like a weird caricature of himself. He's either a badass, just one step below Zoro and like serious and like or overly pervy to the point where
it's not even
like,
that funny.
Even in Ennie's lobby when he was overly pervy and like got destroyed, it was like people were worried that we were gonna think that was like a cop-out for him. Yeah, because I imagine a lot of people maybe think that's a cop-out, where he loses the fight and almost dies because he's perv. But that's just consistent character writing. That's what we said in the podcast of that too. But we're getting to the point where it's like, is there anything else to him? I hope there is. I hope that I'm surprised.
Here's what I think.
That's what I pray.
I think that this to me, in my opinion, is just like the gag went a little bit too far, and then it got worked into the story, so it had to keep escalating. And in a way, I can appreciate the idea of like, oh, this is a gag. Oh, now it's serious. Oh, now we're getting lore about the story, and it's tied in, and there's this blood transfusion plot that is going to follow through, and then in the end culminate in like one of the most beautiful scenes of all of One Piece, of the blood transfusion between Luffy and Jinbei.
Yeah.
That it was incredible. But I think for me it made it seem like there's not really much else to Sanji's character. It made it seem like it just seemed a little bit excessive and relentless. And I also think that Sanji got like extra shit on because he was also there to just kind of like tell Jinbei to kill himself in order for Nami to have the response in that conversation. Yeah,
and that felt like it wasn't even necessarily that like, oh, Sanji is like taking a stand here
like
because
someone
it's Nami. Someone had to say that, and it makes sense for Sanji to say that because it has to do with Nami, and he's very protective of her. But like, so sure. But it was more so that Nami could forgive Jinbei. That was the point of it. And it was less to do with Sanji's role in that conversation.
But I am hopeful because we've been getting, like, I think with the crew getting so big, and not that I like hate anyone on the crew, but it is just an unfortunate reality of having such a large cast is the characters start to get like boiled down to their base components on a daily basis. When they only have maybe 1 or 2 lines per every couple of episodes, it has to get stripped down to one thing or another. In Sanji's case, in Chopper's case, Chopper, just got like kind of reduced. He had some opportunities to be a doctor within this arc, but it was tied up with like Sanji's like bleeding nose, so it just like wasn't that enjoyable to watch Chopper being a doctor when it was like kind of tied up in something that I wasn't a huge fan of. But I'm hopeful because we have had, with Usopp, it's like we had his like secondary arc where he got in the confrontation with Luffy and then left, and that was a whole thing. So it's like, that's why I feel like, if Usopp's not the main focus right now, that's all right. We revisited him. We also have within this arc revisited Nami a little bit. She got some chances to be doing stuff. She got to connect with Shirahoshi. She got to forgive Jinbei. Like, even since we first met back with Hachi, it was focusing more on Nami, and it felt, obviously there was a huge break in between that, but it felt like we got her character a little bit. Yeah,
we've touched base with her. So as
what
we
I'm hoping is we will, and hopefully also with Zoro. What are you, fucking Sanji? With Zoro, we also had kind of a similar thing when with Kuma and him taking all of the pain for Luffy. That was kind of like Zoro showing his devotion to Luffy and to the crew and stuff. So like I feel like we've started reconnecting with some of the earlier Straw Hats, and I'm hopeful that Oda committed hard to the gag of Sanji in this arc. I'm hoping that within the next couple coming arcs, we might have a moment where he gets to take a little bit more center stage. He gets to be like the highlighted crew member. Maybe not this next arc, because as we've said before, we're like in desperate need of more Brook and more Frankie just to make them feel like 100%.
What we need is a first half of Alabasta or a Little Garden or some shit like that. Not a lot of new characters, a couple maybe just to flesh it out. A good enemy, a good island, a good gimmick to play with so that we could, or a thriller bark. We need something like that.
What I would love is like a Little Garden or like something like that. And especially it would make a lot of sense because we're coming in to the new world. We get to pick an island.
Yeah.
I would love to see a lot of like maybe environmental or
maybe Foxy returns.
Maybe not. But I would love to see like how when we Little Garden end up turning into this story of the two like rivals who were battling each other for like however many years it was, and
years.
And it ended up turning into that. But when we first arrived, it was about like, whoa, it's so crazy, there's dinosaurs here, whoa, everything's crazy, we've never been in a place like this before, like, okay, we're gonna like have a contest of like who can get the most meat for Luffy, like I feel like we need something like that, but it's kicked up a notch, and then everyone's there just like a little bit.
We could do a Whiskey Peak.
Yeah, even just like a little bit of like I feel like, yeah, Whiskey, maybe. I feel like I want like just them in like an environment just to see how they interact with only each other, and then we get brought into something else.
Yeah,
is kind of just how I feel. Like I feel like obviously they're building up stuff with Big Mom. There's lots of like things within the new world that we can lead into that are going to be like bigger things. But we just had Marineford, which was like a huge deal. I just want to see more of the crew being the crew, and like I know obviously at this point in the story like everything's being a bit more connected, just kind of in general, but I feel like I want, even if it's just short, just a little something where I just get the new dynamic kind of locked in.
Yeah, I agree. Any more questions?
Oh, this is good. Sanji Joestar asked, what do you think of the way Oda portrays Luffy's growth and strength post-Timeskip? Him having a giant target to protect for the majority of the arc, fighting FISHMAN underwater, and knocking out 50,000 enemies, etc.
It felt very satisfying. It felt very earned. It felt very, like, yes, thank you. Thank you. He trained with one of the strongest, most renowned pirates ever. And for 2 years on an island that was like significantly like hard to survive in and stuff. Great. Thank you. That's how I feel about it. It feels good. It feels good, and it feels like at least the arc got its purpose, because as far as power scaling, because that's the purpose of this arc. We talked about it a million times. We didn't go to Marineford number 2 after Timeskip. What we need to do is establish kind of a baseline and that we can get hyped on, because these people are the kind of level of people that we would have faced earlier without the drugs, earlier in the series. Now we got all these powers, and now we are fighting them with all of these powers. So it gives us a baseline of how far we've come, and Luffy is slingshotted way past. There's a fear of power creep. But because of what we saw at Marineford, and what we know Blackbeard to likely be capable of, power creep. Power creep is less of a problem if you establish the power ceiling before, and that's what they kind of did with Marineford, to a degree, and then leave some open for us to surpass that and go forward. I don't see power creep honestly being a problem in One Piece. So like I'm excited that Luffy can just explode 50,000 people. Yeah. You know, because fuck it.
I'm like, why not?
It makes sense. Because they set the rules for that already. Like if you're like, you know, he didn't just do that. Like that's why it's good, is because he didn't just do that. We knew that he could do that. Mm-hmm. We were surprised at the scale, or we're not even surprised. It was set up so he could do that. Like, you know, but it's still cool, you know?
It's still surprising when you're like 50,000 guys.
But they introduce 100,000 and you're like, oh my god, you got half.
You're also like, not like, oh, he could never do that. That wasn't ever established that he could knock out 50,000 like annoying. Nobody guys.
Is when you're just like ass pulling bullshit.
Especially when we know that he, even under a moment of great duress and untrained, was able to knock out like a ton of people at Marineford. And those people were like probably stronger than these like rando fishman guys.
Probably not. Because they're fishman.
That's true.
They're 10 times stronger, at least physically.
But well, yeah, I think that's more like, I don't know if that's like, I feel like that's more like mentally.
I feel like they're kind of the same in One Piece. So yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think they aren't the same thing, but like effectively they kind of are, because whenever people, you know, Luffy's had his biggest moments from a burst of inspiration, not from crazy training arc. Yeah. You know, usually he doesn't, you know, so your will and your physical strength are usually pretty linked most of the time anyway. But yeah, anyway. But I think that does show something too, where he did it at Marineford and it was like 1 million people and they were really strong. They were like good, like the Marines' best and brightest or whatever. But still fodder, but like still, you know. But this time they were fishmen and it was 50,000 fishmen. So that's like another step up the ladder kind of thing. But yeah.
Fabulous says, we have Pluton, which is a ship, Poseidon, which is a mermaid, and what do you think the last ancient weapon is?
What do you think it is? I think it's a cannon. I think it's a gigantic cannon, or like a laser beam.
That could be a good option. And
it's not a sword.
Here is my thought could be
fishing
that
rod.
It is something to do with something in the air, because we have something under the water, something that goes on top of the water, and then like the other place is in the sky. But the thing is, I would be more inclined to believe that if we hadn't already had like all of Skypiea with the arc in the air.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you could say that is being used to set up that flying contraptions of some degree can exist in the world. They don't.
The more we get into One Piece, the more I'm like, I bet Oda wishes he didn't give NL that turbo arc spaceship thing or whatever, like that. This like, because it moves like kind of like a spaceship, like, and it's like powered by electricity and stuff. It feels like he thought that was like a lightning bolt moment, and he's like, I can make so much out of this. And then he put it in the story. He's like, oh no, wait, Noah, fucking, like, you know, like, just, he's like, oh my god, no, this and that and this, oh my, I fucked up, it's there, it's already there, it's already printed. Fuck it, I'll use it anyway. Like that's, whenever we learn more shit, I'm just like, he's not gonna do the same thing, or he's not gonna like, he's not, like, we already had that in Skypiea, so...
Is we know that he is going to do the same thing.
We already had that in Skypiea. But he's going to do it better,
and we're going to love it every time.
He's not going to have another arc. He's not going to have, like, a big arc. Like, it feels like it should be a big arc. It's, like, biblical. It's, like, you know, ancient. It has all this gravitas. It has all this connotation around it. The idea of an arc as a big, powerful, ancient ship. It's like, oh, so Pluton's probably that. But he already had that. He already did that in Skypiea, so he's not going to do it. So it's probably something else. Maybe a flying machine is what we were thinking. Like, so it's like kind of the same, but like a like a fucking plane, like an AC-130, like something like that. But no, well, Pluton's a boat.
Well, it's what Frankie like has the blueprints for.
Oh right,
It's kind of, we know it's a boat.
We know it's a boat.
I'm pretty sure, like, of some description. Because they're all about shipbuilding, and I'm pretty sure they talked about, like, you know, it's like a ship.
Yeah.
And
I forget if they mentioned that, whether it was a boat in Water 7.
I am like.
They said it was like an ancient weapon and they're shipwrights, so they would, it's probably a boat. But I don't remember if they said it was a boat. We might have just got spoiled, is what I'm saying. But anyway, so it's a boat. No, they probably said it. But anyway, I think that to complete it, like I think that it's probably I think it's probably one of those. It's like a mobility thing for the air, or it's a giant laser cannon or something like that, like Buggy Bomb. Because like do you remember that the Buggy Bomb when Buggy was gonna blow up that town and he had like this gigantic nuke bomb?
I feel like, to me, my thoughts with
some shit like that,
like something that flies, comes from like the fact that like most of it takes place on the water and like on the land, but like mostly on the water because
Skypiea is another island, so
but Skypiea is another like.
It's another dimension.
It's another dimension. There's very specific, like, okay, there's Fishman Island, there's the world, and then there's Skypiea. And these are, like, the three like, vertical dimensions that we work in here within this universe. So I guess it makes sense to me that it's like, okay, you have something under the sea, something on the sea, and then something in the air. Is kind of what would make sense to me. And it would also make sense as to, like, it would reincorporate Skypiea and, like, things of, like, being in there. We also do know that, like, there's like, that cloud island that Nami, like, flew around on for a while. So there's people bopping around in the air all over the place.
Yeah. And there was another Sky Island that Eneru was said to come from. Like, he was from a different Sky Island.
Right.
So there's a bunch, like, the idea is it's a sea. There's another sea up there.
Yeah.
So I just had a thought. So cannon, flying, addition, wings, or I was thinking about the three versions of hockey. So there's armament hockey, which is like the body. There's conqueror's hockey, or observation. Yeah, conqueror's hockey and observation hockey. So we have a boat, which could be like armament hockey. Then we have Shirahoshi's thing, which is like conqueror's hockey. What if there's like an observation hockey version where it's like something of the mind? So like you have something of the body, you have something of the soul, and then something of the mind, maybe. Since there's three, so maybe we're missing the mind, so it's a mind control device, or
sorry.
No.
Or
memory manipulation.
Pluton is the conqueror's hockey, this like ultimate weapon.
Memory manipulation. Sorry. Void Century. Nobody remembers what happened. Attack on Titan comparison.
Well, what I was going to say was, it could be that, but it could be the thing that we're missing is armament hockey, because Shirahoshi could be observation hockey.
Because her mom was observation.
Because her mom had observation hockey, but also it's about her, like, sending her thoughts and then also, like, knowing the thoughts of the Sea King, and she's, like, has to be observant to be able to, like...
That, it just feels like more steps when she is commanding them to do things, and Conqueror's hockey is a conqueror. They command people, like, you know, like you, like they shut off their brains and shut them down. But like, I feel like it's more like Conqueror's hockey than it is like observation hockey.
I guess.
But then again, maybe not. I don't know.
But then, yeah, I don't know. Either way. But that you could be onto something there. I still
fucking probably nothing. Never mind. But I was just thinking, like, we were talking about all the so Roger could hear the voices.
Yeah.
Roger could hear the voices. Observation hockey. Like, as maybe that's the other weapon, is like how Shirahoshi was born with it for hers. Maybe, and like, maybe if we're talking about reincarnation, like Luffy is the reincarnation of Roger, and Roger is like the reincarnation of fucking somebody all the way down 800 years to Joy Boy.
Yeah.
Fucking, what if that's the weapon? What if it's that, and it's this line of reincarnation that has this ability to hear what's going on up there? Or like tap into the poneglyph audiobook. That's the thing, and that's the mind aspect that I was talking about. That's the observation hockey version. So we got the mind, the body, and the mind, the body, and the spirit. We got Conqueror's hockey, mind, body, and spirit. We have observation hockey, armament hockey for the body, conquerors haki for the soul, and then we have those three things that I just said again. The three weapons. Three weapons. Why Uranus would be the mind version, I don't know what the association is with that. I feel like Pluton would normally be like a soul because it's like a gas giant, right? It's not like a... It's like a ball of gas. It's not a physical planet. It's not a planet
Pluto
anymore.
A gas?
Yes.
Oh.
Or it's something. It's not technically a planet. I don't know. Anyway, whatever. It's tiny. Whatever the fuck. Anyway, all that speculation. I bet it's after thinking about it, with all the Attack on Titan, and I don't want to spoil too much about Attack on Titan, but the memory manipulation thing. I think that probably is something, and it maybe has something to do with Joy Boy. Maybe Joy Boy is the progenitor of that. And Luffy is like in this line, like we were thinking. And maybe that is included in the hearing the voices of the Poneglyph audiobook. Like that's all part of the same power. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But could Luffy hear, or was he knocked out? He was knocked out.
What?
When the Sea Kings showed up.
He could hear the Sea Kings, and the Sea Kings made a comment, and they were literally like, why could he hear us? Yeah. I don't fucking know. There was that other guy that could hear us. Yeah. Yeah, that was weird, and then they just like go away. Maybe it's actually the Straw Hat. It just opens up your ears really good.
That's the weapon. That's the One Piece.
He had it the whole time. Yeah, I don't know. It must be something, and it has to be something that isn't just observation haki, because as we know, lots of people have observation haki, and we know that Rayleigh, and I think, like, showing us that very clearly was, like, Rayleigh is extremely good at all types of haki. He is a master of all of them. He couldn't hear it. Yeah. So it definitely is something else.
Yeah, I love that they did that, because, like, if...
Because also then you would just think that it was observation haki.
Yeah, but, like, that it's Rayleigh, and it's, like, you know that he's not a dumbass, so he didn't just accidentally not hear it.
Exactly.
Like, he's a smart guy, so, like, yeah, and he's attentive, so if he didn't hear it, he didn't hear it. He's not just being dumb.
Yeah, so, like, say if it was, like, a flashback to, like, Luffy and his crew, but, like, we knew that Zoro knew observation haki. Yeah. And then it's, like, Zoro's
Zoro, you hear that? What the fuck
are you talking about? It's like, okay.
He's probably asleep.
Exactly. Yeah. You couldn't trust that him not hearing it would mean anything. But we know that Rayleigh is actually good.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think probably that is the third weapon. And it is probably memory manipulation. If not, it's just a big cannon. But the fact that Shirahoshi inherited it, or it it bloomed within her or whatever, whether it's actually a part of her family line or what, I think it is. I think it's supposed to, but anyway, I think that opens up the possibility to it being something like that, especially in the same breath we learned not about oh, tell me about Joy Boy. Well, here's this other person that Joy Boy knew. It's like, okay, what does that tell us about Joy Boy? Maybe it tells us a lot about Joy Boy. Maybe Joy Boy had a similar thing and he was the other weapon. Ooh.
I still
think... the Will of D, and they all made their way to the same place. Frankie, Luffy, and Shirahoshi all made their way to the same place. Sorry.
I still like the idea. I still think that it's really possible that the original idea was going to be like 9 weapons. Yes. I still 100%
That's a Baroque
believe
works
that.
100%.
But I'm not trying to diss Oda by being like, oh, he messed up and then didn't want to do that. It's like, no, as I said before, the best thing about Oda is he is not sticking to an idea if he doesn't like it and it doesn't interest him anymore. So that's how I know it's going to be good. It gives me way more faith in these weapons. The fact that he is declaring there are 3 of them. Yeah. He
narrowed his focus.
Exactly.
Instead of keeping it so wide and then being like, oh, what about the other 6 or 7 weapons, Oda? Oh, they weren't important to the story. Yeah. Or like they just never came up. It's like, okay, so it's the same story with Mr. Six, or maybe not, just a bunch of the Baroque's work people. We never even saw them, but there was all this naming convention established about days of the week and holidays and stuff like that, and then it just kind of got scrambled the further down you get in the list, and then it's like, we just don't have time to deal with all of them, and there's no reason to deal with all of them. I think the same thing happened. And part of me wonders, on that theory, as we talked about this whole, 9 planet... What, did I interrupt you?
I can't remember.
I think I did, sorry. part of what I wonder if what he was doing with that, because I think it's crystal clear after no confirmed planets. Oh, he just chose the random last planets in order.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way he doesn't go from the last planet in the orbit to the like the sun's in the middle. That's a critical, like, that is clear theming and setup. You're using a convention that people know about to create the expectation so that we ask the question without you having even to pose it for us. You put that in our heads, you use this framework, and everybody has that, so then we can take it from there. What I was going to say was, 10 weapons, Jinbei joins, how many members we got?
10.
I don't think like, when I think about Oda chapter 1, I don't know if he was thinking about Frankie, or if maybe he was thinking about Frankie. I don't know if he was thinking about Brook. Maybe he was thinking about Brook. I don't think he was thinking about Brook, because I don't think that when Laboon was first made, that he actually was consciously thinking about Brook.
Yeah.
And that, so, like, I don't think he was at chapter 1 either, but my point is, somewhere along the line, he thought probably 9 planets and then 1 super planet weapon thing. You know, and we're collecting all of these crew members. And around the time that we first learned about all this stuff was right before we started getting new crew members like crazy.
And also right around when we were getting a lot of sun iconography. And you know who literally has a sun tattooed, well, not tattooed, branded onto his chest? Jinbei literally has the sun, and he would be the 10th crew member, which would be all of the planets, like, lined up.
I think we just cracked the code.
We're winning, and you know
it does. We aren't, because it's not real anymore. But like, it was definitely.
It was there. This is like our Naruto pain theory.
Pepe Sylvia.
But what I was trying to say is, also, I don't know what Uranus is in Greek, but, like, Poseidon is obviously the god of the sea, and Pluto is Hades, so, like, the god of hell, which would make sense if, like, the ultimate, most dangerous weapon.
Yeah.
Is straight, literally from hell. So it makes sense if, like, that's, like, the weapon, and then Poseidon is from the sea. You know what I mean? So it's like, then I feel like it's correlating to that.
Yeah. In Greek mythology, Uranus is a primordial god of the sky.
I'm a genius.
He was the son and husband of Gaia Earth. Oh, wow. You're right.
And what's actually with the son and husband of Earth, which is interesting because Skypiea is literally a place of Earth within the sky.
Yes.
So it is like the child of the Earth, but it's in the sky, doing something else. Yeah, I think that it definitely has to do something.
Romans identified him with their god Caelus, god of the sky in Roman myth. Yeah, 100%.
So it has something to do with this guy. But that could Oda's so creative, it could take place within anything that has to do with, but I've, like, you know, just the fact that it's, like, the most dangerous weapon that can never be revealed, and if it ever gets out, it will kill everyone, and then that being, like, with the god of hell, or, like, the planet that represents the, you know, it's, I feel like, yeah. I feel like, and it makes sense with, like, just everything that he's established of, like, the 3, like, terrains, and also, like, Skypiea being so, like, yeah. Important.
But, like,
you're, like, it's so, like, just, like, kind of randomly there, but, like, if we know him, he likes to reincorporate stuff later, so I'm assuming that it's going to take a bigger place in the story later on, as I'm sure Fishman Island will be, and maybe even in this, like, final end of times kind of thing, where Fishman Island is getting fucking destroyed by Luffy, and then, like, Skypiea is doing something else at the same time, you know what I mean? Like,
well, yeah, now that you think about it, it's like, so there's Skypiea, Fishman Island, 10,000, and they're both, like, you know, they both have, like, a pretty much they very mirrored.
That was the first place that we saw, well, the second place, other than Alabasta.
Third place, the kingdom that was destroyed, or whatever, which was an island on the sea, right? Yeah. So, boom, 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 we got 3, so that's, you know, like, I don't know, like, I'm feeding into it, a weapon for each place, since Shirahoshi's from down there.
And the thing is, like, Skypiea was the first place that we got into opponent.
What if Enel just has, what if that was the weapon? Like, and we just didn't know it at the time.
But I kind of think that Oda wants to do something different because Shirahoshi being the weapon, like I feel like he's going for something a little bit different.
What about the bell? The bell was really important.
Yeah. I don't know, but I was gonna say something and now
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
Hades, hell, weapon from hell.
Oh,
Skypiea. Shirahoshi.
Yeah. Oh, for frick's sake.
3 weapons.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Sorry. No, yeah, you can. Just take a minute.
It probably wasn't important.
No, it probably was. Shirahoshi.
Skypiea was like, it makes sense for Skypiea to be important and relevant because it wasn't just a random side quest. We learned so much about poneglyphs, and like that's where we really got into Robin and like learned that Roger was interested in the poneglyphs. Like all of that is tied up in Skypiea, which means that it's not just like a random pit stop 10,000 meters off the side that we don't need to care about. It's like a place of significance upon this journey that will probably be referenced back to at some time, because Roger didn't vandalize any of the other poneglyphs that we've seen before or after that, but he did vandalize that one.
And that's when he was saying about the voice of all things.
Yeah.
Like that's when he wrote that, and he wrote it on the poneglyph.
So that was before he saw Sea Kings, before like anything like that, you know, like.
Not necessarily, because I thought he may, I don't know. We don't know the timeline, because it was like 4 years before his death that he went on his final voyage, or whatever. I forget the exact years. Anyway, he had been a pirate for a long time, and then gathered the full crew, and then went out to finish the Grand Line before his death. So maybe that was on that journey, that flashback, or maybe it was before, and he didn't know, because he met Rayleigh first, and it was just him and Rayleigh that we saw in that flashback. So that could have been before he got terminally ill and decided to go on his final voyage, his final cruise. Anyway, I think we covered a lot of ground today.
I was going to address this one last question. This is why I was getting ready. Monkey D. Lucci asked us to rankings of pre-Timeskip arcs. And
first, I'll say that.
What I was gonna say was that we are going to do a separate video specifically for that with this tier list, but I'll actually probably make a new one because we like this one as a decoration.
Yeah.
But we're going to be doing that, and maybe also character rankings or like island ranking, like whatever people want to see. We want to be a little bit more creative, do a little bit more like extra kind of stuff if people like that.
I think that could be fun.
I hope that they will. And also because it's like these podcasts I feel like are good but not necessarily the best for that kind of a format of like in-depth ranking. Like if you go and watch our streams on our main channel of ranking this, like I think there's like 5 parts so far of like 2+ hour streams, and we're still not done because sometimes one show will take like an hour to talk about, and especially with One Piece, I feel like, you know, we're gonna have to go in depth and you know, talk about why we're ranking certain things in certain places. So if you're interested in that, I don't know, maybe leave a comment saying that you're interested in it, and then we'll know. But yeah, I think that there was a few more questions, but I think that
an hour and a half is good enough. I thought this was going to be like 45 minutes, but here we are. We actually had I feel like it was very productive, though. We got a lot of theorizing, and I think we did a lot of good stuff. Leave a like and subscribe. It's 1:30 in the morning. Hope you enjoyed. See you next one, Carson.
I'm Lindsay.
Bye-bye.